In today's topic, I will be discussing stock valuation. This is chapter number 9 from your recommended book. The learning objectives for today are to understand who are stockholders and what is a share, to understand the distinction between common and preferred stockholders, to understand the rights and responsibilities of stockholders, to differentiate stock's price and its intrinsic value, to understand the return from shares, and to understand different stock valuation models to estimate stock price. You are all aware about the accounting equation, which is assets is equals to liabilities plus shareholders' equity. Every business requires assets for its operations, even if it is small, even if it is large. For example, a business might require building, it might require computers. These are all assets, and assets are purchased through money. So the business has to raise capital. Now, the capital or the funds can come in two forms. Number one is liability. So the assets can be purchased through loan, and option number two is through shareholders' equity. So, if the business chooses the option of shareholders' equity, if the management decides that they are going to issue shares in order to raise the capital, then stock certificates will be sold in the stock market and investors will purchase those stock certificates. Once the investors purchase the certificates, the company, the corporation will get the capital that they require in order to purchase the assets. So basically, if you own a stock, you have a share in the ownership of a company. Stock represents a claim on the company's assets and earnings. So, if you purchase that stock certificate, you will become the owner of the organization. So, if I want, I can go tomorrow and I can become the owner of Engro, or I can become the owner of Nestle simply by purchasing one share of the company. Now, there are two types of shares. You have common stock and you have preferred stock. So, even if you purchase a common stock, even if you purchase a preferred stock, in both cases you will be owners of the organization. Ownership is present in both cases. So basically, these are two types of shares that are available in the market, and preferred shares can actually have a lot of different variants. So the general shares are called common shares, and if there's some priority is being given compared to the common stockholders, and those become preferred shares. So first we will discuss common stockholders. Common stockholders are the owners of the organization. They have voting rights. These, what does these voting right means? It means that each share that you have, each common share that you have, it carries one vote. So if I have 5 shares, I have 5 votes. If I have 10 shares, I have 10 votes. A firm's common stockholders have the right to elect its directors, who in turn elect the officers who manage the business. So the votes are used at the annual general meeting to elect the board of directors, who then elect the company CEO. So if you want to have a say in the management of the company, then you will purchase common shares because you want to have your voting right with you. Plus, the voting right is also used in other important business matters as discussed in the annual general meeting. So, if you want to say in the company's overall running, you will the only way a shareholder can communicate that what do they want is through the votes. Once the votes have been cast, then everything is done by the management. Then you cannot claim anything. You cannot go and say that you want a dividend. You cannot demand a dividend. Everything is up to the management afterwards. Now, then you have company liquidation rights. The previous slide said that stock represents a claim on the company's assets and earnings. So, you have a claim on the company's assets if you are a shareholder of that business. In that case, if the business goes bankrupt and if it is being liquidated, if the company's shares are being sold out in the market, you have a percentage share in those assets. However, if you are a common stockholder, first payment will go to the debt holders, to the people from which the business has taken loan. सबसे पहले उधार पे किया जाता है, उसके बाद ओनर्स को पेमेंट होती है अगर कुछ बच जाता है तो. So first priority is to pay off the loan of the business. The second priority is after that to pay the preferred shareholders. So preferred shareholders will get the second payment, and then if something is left over, अगर कुछ बच जाता है तो फिर common stockholders वालों को payment मिलती है. Then return on capital. If you are a common stockholder, there is no guaranteed return. The return of shares comes in two forms. Number one is dividend yield. And two is capital gains yield. So the return of stock comes in two forms. Number one is if the company directly distributes its profit. If the company, let's say, makes a net income of 10,000 and out of that 10,000 they decide, okay, 6,000 they are going to give it to the shareholders in the form of cash, in the form of bonus shares. That is the return that is coming directly from the organization, whereas capital gains yield is the return that is coming from the stock exchange. So because in the stock exchange the stock price keeps on fluctuating, the stock market is always very volatile. So you might have purchased the shares for, let's say, 1000, and if the price has increased from 1000 to 1200, in 6 months you have made a 200 profit in that case. But it might be possible that the price actually decreases from 1000 to 800. So you purchase the stock for 1000 but the price is now only 800. In this case you have made a capital loss. So the return on capital, that's why the return on capital for common shares is not fixed at all, because neither is their dividend fixed. The management decides how much dividend will be paid. It is not decided beforehand. So there is no fixed dividend over here. If the company performs well and if the management decides that they are not going to reinvest, they will pay out the dividend. And if the management decides that they're going to reinvest into the business, then the shareholders will get no dividend in that case. And number two, even your capital gain, even the stock price movement, you cannot know beforehand where will the stock price go. Will it increase? Will it decrease? What will happen? That's why there is no guaranteed return for common stockholders. Now we will move on to preferred stock. So preferred stock are still owners of the organization, but generally they do not have their voting rights. So if you are a preferred stockholder, most probably you cannot vote. So if you want a say in the running of the business, or if you want to elect the board of directors, you should not purchase preference shares because generally they do not have voting rights. Now why do they don't have voting rights? It's because of the preferential treatment they are getting in the liquidation and return on capital. Company liquidation rights, so like already discussed, they are paid after the payment is being made to the debt holders, but they are paid before the common stockholders. So first level is the debt holders will be paid, then preferred shares will be paid, and then common share payments will be made. Number two is even in the form of dividends, when the business decides to pay dividends, even in that case, the preference stockholders get a preference. They are paid before any distribution to common stockholders, even in this case. So even once a company decides to pay dividends, first they are going to pay the dividends of preference shares, and if something is left over, then common stockholders will get a dividend. Moreover, the dividend is usually guaranteed, like a fixed coupon payment. Like you've already studied bonds. In bonds, you have a fixed coupon rate. In the same way, you have a fixed rate over here. So the dividend is decided from the beginning and it doesn't fluctuate.